Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. There's a movie at the moment which is out recently, and if you're watching this sometime in the future, it's going to be terribly out of date. A new movie by one of the great filmmakers of Hollywood has come out, and people are going, yeah, nah, which I think is a bit of a shame. Of course, the filmmaker is Francis Ford Coppola. The movie's Megalopolis. Adam Driver's in it, Aubrey Plaza, Lawrence Fishburne, Giancarlo Esposito's in there, John Voight. Yeah. It's an ambitious movie that cost $120 million to make. And all of that money came from Francis Ford Coppola himself. He didn't get it from the usual Hollywood money funding mechanisms of go to a studio, cutting deals and things like that. Totally did it off his own back. The guy's 85 years old. And I watched it today. I took a train. I went to Yarraville, of course, to the Sun Cinema Complex, which for me is the movie complex in Melbourne that I most love. 8 little boutique cinemas, all decorated in different ways. Close to good coffee, close to a decent lunch. There's nothing not to love about it. So I popped in there and I went to a little cinema way down the back of the complex called La Scala. And La Scala is decorated beautifully. I think it may be the most beautiful of the cinemas. And all of the seats are low couches. So there's not many people there. You can stretch out on a couch if you want to. And there weren't many people there because there was one other guy sitting up the back behind me. And La Scala is just so beautiful. It looked like it could have been one of the locations for Megalopolis. So the vibe was right for me. I sat down, I had my drink. I didn't have any food yet because I was going to get lunch afterwards, which I did. Got a banh mi, got a Vietnamese iced coffee, sat on a nice bench under an awning, had a really good time all day. And I watched Megalopolis. So it's 2 hours and 18 minutes, which is not a short film, but I kind of enjoyed it. I think maybe the editing could have been just a little bit crisper. You can always argue that with a longer film. Here's the thing, it's science fiction, and people haven't actually mentioned very much that this is a science fiction movie, and it bloody well is. It's set in an alternate universe where there's an American Republic, but instead of New York, you have New Rome. And the mayor of the city, Franklin Cicero, played by Giancarlo Esposito, runs the city. Meanwhile, there's a genius architect called Caesar Catalina, played by Adam Driver, who has an alternative vision for the city. He knows that the money men are running the city. He knows that there's underprivileged people and homeless people and people doing it really rough. There are food riots. There are all sorts of problems in the city of New Rome. And Caesar has this vision of using a bioadaptive building material that he's created called Megalon to recreate the city and make it a utopia for the citizens of New Rome. This isn't popular with various people in the city. Most importantly, Mayor Cicero, and also a weird old billionaire called Hamilton Crassus III, played by that well-known nutcase John Voight. Crassus is the money man of the city. He's the wealthiest man in the city. He holds immense power and influence. And he's also Caesar's uncle. He has a real shit of a grandson called Claudio Pulcher, played by Shia LaBeouf. And yes, Shia LaBeouf. Meanwhile, there are a whole bunch of other people. Cicero has a beautiful daughter called Julia, played by Natalie Emmanuel. Caesar has a mistress, a TV presenter specializing in financial news called Wow Platinum, played by Aubrey Plaza. There's an immense number of famous people in this movie. Caesar's driver is played by Lawrence Fishburne. He's a guy called Fundi. Talia Shire plays Caesar's mother. Talia Shire, who is the sister of Francis Ford Coppola, plays Constance, Caesar's mother. Jason Schwartzman's in there as a member of Cicero's cronies. Jason Schwartzman, he's related to Coppola. And there are a whole bunch of other people who are really familiar. James Remar's in there as well. Balthazar Getty's in there. Dustin Hoffman playing Cicero's fixer, Nush Berman. So there are all these familiar faces that just keep coming into frame as this story plays out. And before I go into the details and tell you what I think about the movie, there are a lot of people who said that Coppola was stupid for putting $120 million of his own spondulics into making this movie. And I've got thoughts about that. For a start, there's a lot there for $120 million. I'll be honest with you, all the money's on the screen. For another thing, Francis Ford Coppola is immensely wealthy. He is the Crassus of the deal here. He sold a couple of his wineries. By the way, I've drunk his wine. And Francis Ford Coppola's vineyards and wineries do a really nice drop. But here's the story. He's 85 years old. Unfortunately, this year, his wife Eleanor died. If he wants to spend $120 million on making a movie, I'm there for that. I have seen very wealthy people spend immense amounts more money on a lot worse things. buying Twitter for $44 billion, for instance. That's really pissing away your money, given the fact that it's worth about $10 billion now. But if somebody wants to spend immense amounts of their own money to make a movie, go for it. Particularly if you're the dude who made The Godfather, who made The Conversation, who made Apocalypse Now, who made Dementia 13 and Finian's Rainbow. If you're that guy, I'm there for you spending your money on making a movie, and I will go and see it on the basis that you have earned my respect. The movie itself, it doesn't look or feel like any other movie I've seen. It's wonderful symbolism in it. There's some magic realism in this that's eye-poppingly good and is done in a way that American films don't do. There are films from South America, there are films from Europe who lift their game with magic realism, and there are things like Love Lies Bleeding, which uses magic realism to resolve its plot at the end. In general, American films steer away from that kind of stuff. There's also a strong science fictional aspect of it. Megalopolis, the city that César makes, is magnificent. And even before that, the city of New Rome feels like it's alive. And as César is driving through the city with Lawrence Fishburne at the wheel of his Citroën, you can see the city reacting to the politics and the events that are happening there. There are immense statues representing things like justice that are reacting to the way the city is. They're probably hallucinations that César is having, but they're visually represented. We've got a lot of show, not tell in this movie. And I'm there for that. It is magnificent. And when something disastrous happens in the city, you see giant shadows of the citizens cast up onto the skyscrapers. And again, that's beautiful visual storytelling. And every couple of minutes in this film, you see something that's eye-popping and something that's magnificent and something that's weird and something that shouldn't work but it does. And you see some things that should work but don't. This movie requires a bit of homework if you want to understand it fully. And I'm going to bring up the Wikipedia page for this. You have to understand something that happened 65 BCE, the Catilinarian conspiracy, which was a conspiracy and an attempted coup d'etat in Rome to overthrow the Roman consuls of 63 BCE by Lucius Sergius Catilina. Didn't work, ended badly. I'll let you look at that up on Wikipedia. That is the basis that Coppola used for this story, which he has been brewing since the 1970s. For 46 years, Francis Ford Coppola has had this in his pocket, waiting to make it as a movie. He attempted it a number of times over the years, including, he wanted to do it, and then 9/11 happened and he had to change the story. He wanted to do it earlier and various studios didn't finance it. And finally, he's blown out a few more candles than he used to on his birthday cake. He's decided to make it, and he's made it. If you enjoy cinema as an immersive experience, you want to see this film. Adam Driver as César is a little bit lost at times, but that's kind of okay because the way that Coppola makes a lot of his films is chaotic. He allows his actors to improvise at times. Making this one was so chaotic that he lost his visual effects team. He lost some of his set design people because they couldn't work with him, and he had to start again from that. So in some ways, it's a little bit like the making of Apocalypse Now. Ultimately, classic movie, but the way he made it was crazily chaotic, and that was the case indeed with Megalopolis. So Adam Driver, I think, a little bit lost there, but the other cast members do really good. Giancarlo Esposito, who's never bad in anything really, is really good as Cicero. Natalie Emmanuel as Julia is fantastic. Aubrey Plaza playing Val Platinum. Aubrey Plaza is a really interesting actress because she has this persona of portraying sexiness with a little bit of danger to it and a lot of unpredictability. And Val Platinum has that. She's ambitious. She ultimately leaves Catalina and marries Crassus, the John Voight character. Doesn't end well, but she does that for the money. She's all about finding a position in the hierarchy of New Rome that befits the way she sees herself. There are some scenes with her that are just wow. Could have done without Shia LaBeouf gamma hutching Aubrey Plaza, but that's neither here nor there. Talia Shire is really good playing Constance, César's mother. She really has a couple of moments there. And Catherine Hunter playing Cicero's wife has some moments as well. She's more in tune with César's vision for New Rome and Megalopolis than her husband is for most of the film. John Voight as Crassus is pretty good. It's probably going to be the last good role that John Voight does. Lawrence Fishburne, who's the film's narrator as well, is, though he is in the front seat, he's taking a bit of the back seat in this one. But he does really good as a loyal friend and servant to Caesar. But this movie is sumptuous, and yes, it's all over the place, and yes, you don't quite know where the plot's going until it ultimately gets there, and you probably don't know for a couple of minutes after that as well. It's a movie that talks about the future and legacy, and talks about building a utopia. And there are a number of quotes used during the movie arguing against the possibility of utopia, and yet Caesar ultimately builds one. This is an optimistic and hopeful film about the future of the world, particularly America, and yet it is critical about a lot of things, including the bread and circuses nature of modern media. It's very critical of that. It's very critical about the power of wealthy men and political power for men, and it is usually men, who are more like gangsters than politicians or statesmen. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. You could dive deeply into the social and political underpinnings of Megalopolis. Now, a lot of people didn't like it. I think it's an ambitious film. I think it's one of those films that you've got to go into, watching all of it completely, and you probably need to watch it twice to get the full gist. And when it comes out on physical media, I will watch it twice. I don't think it's a perfect film. I really don't fully know whether it's a good film, but it's a fascinating one, and it's an immersive one. And it's one that hits you in the face with things you have never seen before in cinema. And I'm there for that. I'm so tired of movies where I can predict the next plot beats in a film, and I can predict the next twist or turn of what the characters are doing. I'm so over that, because I'm not the brightest person in the world, but if a movie makes itself too predictable for me, I lose interest. The characters in this one are bold, let's just put it that way. There's a bit at the start where Caesar is showing the city his vision of the future, his megalopolis, by creating a large-scale model of the city. The characters are walking on suspended platforms above this model of the city. And there's a scene at the start where Caesar quotes Hamlet at length. I'm not too sure about Adam Driver's delivery of that, but it is kind of bold to do that, and it is pertinent to what's being said. All the other main players are on those platforms as well. Crassus is there, Cicero's there, and their entourages and the other players in there are there. And Wow Platinum is there, basically doing a live broadcast about these discussions which are happening on suspended platforms above this model of the city, which sets things up as a very theatrical device that they use at the start of the film. And for some people, that's going to be a bit alienating, but for me, I'm there. I love live theatre. I'd never see enough of it. I don't know if I've seen the live play in the last 10 years. Actually, I have. I did see one directed by my good friend Grant Watson and starring his wife Sonia Marcon. But apart from that, I haven't been to a lot of live theatre. And those scenes at the start of Megalopolis made me want to go back to live theatre. But it is quite messy at times. It is all over the place. There's an assassination attempt which is mind-blowingly good. I kind of knew something was coming, and then it hit, and it hit hard. And it's a masterpiece of cinema. It's got that Francis Ford Coppola magic to it. I think this movie is one you should see, whether you're going to love it or not, whether you're going to enjoy it or not. For the next however long, it's going to be the movie people are talking about who knows something about cinema. Yes, there are going to be people talking about The Wild Robot and other films that are in cinemas right now, but I think among movie buffs particularly, Megalopolis is the one people are going to be talking about for a while and arguing about. There are some people that say it's shit and dismiss it out of hand. But I think there's a lot of meat on the bone, even if it's not particularly meat some people will like. For me, I love going to movies like this, which I don't entirely go, yeah, 2 thumbs up on, but are ambitious and show me something I haven't seen, and are trying to do something that cinema doesn't do. This movie doesn't reference other movies, except possibly some of Fellini's later films like Roma and things like that. It's got a Fellini-esque feel about it for a lot of it. Maybe that's part of the kind of Roman underpinning of the story. But it does at times, particularly with the bread and circuses sequence, feel like a Fellini film. And I'm there for that. I love Fellini films. And being reminded that I love Fellini films was something this movie did for me. And there's also an alteration of the American Pledge of Allegiance at the end of the film, which I think should be adopted. Megalopolis is mind-blowing. Go and see it in a cinema if you can. Yes, it is going to be on streaming eventually. And to be honest with you, I would love it if Coppola got his money back on this one. I doubt if he will. And I think he was prepositioning himself to accept that. This is, I could be wrong, but I think it's the last movie of a magnificent filmmaker, a filmmaker who has changed cinema, who has given us so much. He gave us Tommy Steele singing to Petula Clark, apart from anything else. All joking aside, you got to see the last movie by Francis Ford Coppola if you're a movie buff. You're letting yourself down if you don't. And I think Megalopolis is a movie that's going to be worth your time. And it's a visually stunning movie. And when it does come out on 4K, I am going to dig deep to get it, because I think it's important enough film. And I think it's a movie that will benefit from the highest definition you can watch it in. I know a couple of people who are going to see it at IMAX tonight, and an IMAX version of this film would be mind-blowing. But for me, I was happy to do it in a 40-seat cinema with couches and beautiful artwork on the wall, and just immerse myself in this movie. That's my thoughts on Megalopolis. Let me know if you've seen it or whether you're going to see it as well. I'll be interested to see what a number of people think about it. But if you're a science fiction fan, go and see it anyway, because there's enough science fiction in the mix there to keep it interesting. And it is definitely an alternate universe story, even though it does blur the line between science fiction and magic realism. So let me know what you think. Yeah, and of course, the usual things. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can become a channel member and support the channel that way, or you can become a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. I've got the full-on Science Fiction Saturday coming up on Saturday, and we're going to do a double feature then. So until all of that, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch the last Francis Ford Coppola movie, and I'll catch you next time.